welcome to the LUMR Roundtable, a podcast where we pick one album, focus on it for a month, and then come together to discuss it as a group. Today we have a bunch of great people. We've got Nicci and Brady from Wisconsin. You guys want to just quick say hi?
Hello.
Okay, and then we have the We Are the Trees band, Tristan, Jordy, Liam, and Delaney from the Northern Ireland. The Northern Ireland.
The one and only.
Thanks for joining, everyone. And as always, my co-host Henry Zimmerman, calling from Colorado. How you doing today, Henry?
Chilling in Colorado.
Okay.
What time is it in Colorado? Sorry, can I ask that?
Yeah.
11:30 in the morning.
That's mad.
Okay, so the album this month was Sandman from 2019 by Trudy and the Romance, a self-described mutant 50s pop band from Liverpool. The album has about a dozen tracks. I couldn't find much out about the band itself, to be honest, but they had a couple interesting things on their Bandcamp. In the description of their last EP, Junkyard Jazz, which was the precursor to Sandman, they cited influences including the Beach Boys, Jonathan Richman of the Modern Lovers, which was like an American garage rock pre-punk era band in the 70s. And then old Disney movies that sort of melded like cartoon with reality, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Space Jam, Mary Poppins, being the inspiration for like the romanticized Technicolor realm in which all their songs are set, heavily influenced by film. And talking about Sandman, the songs follow little Johnny and his love for his high school sweetheart who disappears. He performs with his band, the original doo-wop Spacemen, and must get from the blue world to the new world. It's about conquering the Sandman, who forever taunts him with the mutated memory of a sand girl, is how they describe it. So really interesting stuff. I'd love to just start off with some initial perspectives here. Nicci, do you want to start off with like, what did you think going into it? What were your first thoughts?
So I thought the album cover was, I've never seen anything like that. I think whoever drew the artwork for this, like, I've been calling it like a cat wizard. Whoever did that did an excellent job. It's nice to have a picture for what I assume is Johnny. So I guess I didn't really have any expectations going in. I was just kind of like, what is going to happen?
Yeah.
So I guess like that was my initial impression of it.
Cool. So somebody want to go next?
I didn't really know what to think when I first seen it, because I thought like it was maybe going to be something that was a bit like more like not upbeat, but like a faster pace, because it was quite chilled, and I really really like the cover because it's sick. It kind of reminds me of like the old step, but like on the like Sailor Jerry circus series sort of vibes, where it's a bit kind of weird and spooky on it, like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, almost like classic horror movie posters where you kind of have like the bad guy looming in the background, and then these people kind of sit in the front being like, what do we do? Innocent heroes. So I think that also kind of shows that movie influence that they're really talking about going for there.
Definitely. Brady, what did you think?
These are all good points happening around me. I honestly did not dwell on the album cover pretty much at all. I saw the fangs, I thought that looks weird, and then I listened to it. I was actually a little excited to dig into this when you said this was the album, because their music has come up in my Discover Weekly more than once, and this was finally an excuse to actually listen to them. They're one of many bands that Spotify says is related to Boyo and the Velveteens that it's constantly recommending to me. And so in that vein, I was pretty eager to get in.
Okay, yeah, the Velveteens make sense. Henry, did you have any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I was also pretty attracted to the album. It kind of gave me Goosebumps book cover vibes, because it's not super well illustrated, but like that's the point. So I was totally in from the cover. And then Karina, you described it earlier in the pod as like mutant 50s pop.
That's how they describe themselves, yeah.
It's exactly right. If I had heard that before I listened and then listened, I would have been like, that's exactly what I heard. So I think it's pretty spot on. They accomplished what they were trying to do musically, I would say. Came across pretty well.
Yeah. I didn't expect it to sound like it did. For some reason, the album cover made me think of Johnny Goth. I don't know why. Not his older stuff, but his newer stuff. And I was thinking I was gonna get some like really sad emo indie rock, and that's not what I got. It's totally different. Liam or Delaney, did either of you have initial thoughts?
Honestly, like everyone said my point, so I was like,
Okay, that's fine.
I was like, everyone got it across.
Good.
Like I don't know what to I just didn't know what to expect from it, and apparently everybody's looking at the album cover, and I just didn't really notice it. I just went straight into the album, just listened to the songs. I just didn't expect the amount of music and amount of genre fusion was in this album, like.
Yeah.
And it has exceeded my expectation of the whole album, what it's going to sound like, and also that's my point on it.
Had any of you ever heard of this artist before? I'm assuming not, but
I had no idea who
I actually had, yes.
Yeah.
Like accidentally, I was on Spotify. Like a friend had showed me ages ago, specifically because a different piece of artwork that they had really liked, and I listened to it, and I was like, wow, this is like really weird, sort of 50s noise pop weirdness, I guess.
Yeah.
And then yeah.
Cool.
I think I've heard people talking about them before. Like I've heard people talking about them, but like I've never listened to them. I'm pretty sure someone said something about them at work before. But like,
yeah, you must have heard them before. They're from Liverpool.
Yeah, I know, that's why, because I've definitely heard of the name before. That's why I was like, I've heard of these guys. Are these local? You know what I mean? Because there was a couple of guys like a couple of times I think told me to listen to them. I can't remember why.
Yeah, I was wondering if you'd listened to them before because you lived there, but okay. So first listen through, how did you feel about it initially?
I sort of think it was like a lot to palate maybe at first. You know, it's kind of like, okay, there's a lot of influences going on here, and they have a really, really refined aesthetic, as I call it, like kind of like an aesthetic sound, obviously with the high movie influence, and they're really going for kind of like a really unique look and feel around that sort of gives you a really clear mental image of what these guys are about. But what I kind of wasn't then expecting is kind of like almost like this show tune style of musical composition that these guys have, which really kept me hooked. It was really interesting, you know. It's just some of the actual like note choices that they're using, and the phrase and the way that it moves section to section, and some songs tend not to repeat, and how kind of upbeat it is, even though it has an underlying kind of really sad overtone. It's a really interesting blend of like a modern, eerie feeling kind of artist, but with like kind of really classic sort of show writing that kind of does reference again movies and like that. But I also think like maybe some classic theater, and like I kind of got some maybe Danny Elfman compositional vibes as well. You know, maybe not as bizarro, but definitely that kind of like really bouncy movement sort of thing.
Yeah,
I just thought it was sick. I was vibing.
I definitely think it had like lots of like elements for like I really like heard a lot of like they were saying like the Beach Boys, but like Pet Sounds album in particular. Like there was like one song I can't remember what one it was, but it was more in the like I think it was in the middle of the album, where when I first heard it, like I just thought, oh, this just reminds me of a Pet Sounds track.
I'll jump in. Yeah. Putting this on the first time, I was pretty much hooked from the get-go. I think this album has an incredible open with My Baby's Gone Away. It begins so quietly, just with those two alternating notes on the guitar. You think they're going to ease you in. And then that one guitar chord just hits you like a truck. The opening track was far more abrasive and in your face than I thought these guys had in them to do coming in. And I think despite such a powerful open, by the time I got to the album, or by the end of the album, I realized that I tuned a lot of it out, which was unfortunate. Overall impression on first listen was I think that the A side is very strong and the B side not so much.
Okay.
And I can give my 2 cents. After my first listen, I will say I looked up a bunch of reviews and I feel kind of bad because I don't know if I don't know if I got it. I think a lot to palette is a really good way to put it. A lot of it, I think they could have really improved their sound if they brought forward more of the background, and the singer's vocals are so slurry. I wish that they would have brought forward more percussion or their bass, and just kind of differentiated between the two. Because eventually, I think the reason it sounded so blurred together for me too, as well, is because everything started to kind of slur. So I just wish I could have seen some more, like, I think on Sandman, there's this part where they could have like had some drum hits like right behind the vocals and been like, but they didn't. And I think they just could have taken it like a step further. So overall, I think my impression was kind of negative. First pass, I kind of described it as Connor Oberst if he was in the musical Cabaret. I don't know. I've been trying to listen to it more and kind of get what they're going for aesthetic wise. But yeah, first pass, I don't think it was something that was really up my alley.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I thought I think the first time you listen to it is kind of like you kind of just need to like sit back and sort of take it into it, and then the second time you listen, you can kind of appreciate what it's about a bit more. Because like it is just complete. It's just kind of catch you off guard of what they're doing, because it's just like it's so old. They're doing like a pretty old sort of, or like a take on a pretty old style from like a 50s style, like. So I think they're doing well with it. So it sounds good, like me.
To talk about my second listen, it kind of reframed my first listen, which I didn't really get a lot out of, as more of kind of like when you're reading a new book set in a new world, they got to do all the world building. My first listen was just kind of explaining the world they were operating in. So when I went back and listened, it felt like I got way more into the vibe they were trying to put out. And it actually, to compare it, not sonically, but just in terms of vibe, it feels like Sam's Town from The Killers, which is very like American Southwest, but very Americana. And so even though this is, I think the show tunes writing that Jordy mentioned was spot on too, but kind of had that good American vibe, which is interesting because they're British. So clearly their influences are all they're about in a good way.
I totally agree with the Killer's point. Like when I first listened to the album, immediately after I just wanted to listen to Hot Fuzz. I was listening to it in work, and then immediately after I was like, I just need to listen to Hot Fuzz now. And I think it was just because it had that same sort of style.
Yeah, a lot of the influences they cited, if not all of them, were like American. So it's very interesting. Sort of that Americana rock comes through. Any other initial thoughts before we move on to more specific stuff?
I want to say you kind of blew my mind there comparing it to Sam's Town just now. That is like just expanding my entire vision of this album right now. I love Sam's Town, and that was not a comparison I saw or I thought to draw whatsoever, but I don't think you're wrong in it at all.
Well, and specifically, like A Dustland Fairy Tale is the one specific Killer song that is like the vibe that I'm referring to. So anyways, shout out to the Killers.
Hell yeah. All right, so next, talk about particular songs. Were there any songs on the album that stood out to you for whatever reason, and you kind of went back and like listened to that one in particular more than the rest of the whole album?
I think Doghouse was probably my favorite. I think that might have been like their single for it as well.
Yeah,
it was unreal. I think like the chorus line I have it written down here. Put me in the doghouse, baby. I want to be with you. It's just such a nice lyric, man. Like I love it so much. Like it was so good. I think it's probably my favorite song of the album. And there is that other song I've read down here somewhere. Like Sandman was a good song itself, but I also thought Midnight Blue Girl and the original doo-wop Spaceman was an absolute banger. Like,
those are the two songs I agree with. Like, I was good. That was the two songs I was thinking as well. Like, Doghouse is actually like, it's just so like, you just get so into it. It's lovely. Like,
I actually kind of agree with what Brady had mentioned earlier. I think about like that opening track. Was it My Baby's Gone Away? Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, it really kind of sets a really good tone for kind of what's coming in the album. I think it kind of mixes some really nice melodic songwriting ideas with the idea of getting that their noise and that aesthetic kind of mashed in there as well. Like, you know, so I think it really stood out for me as a track that did justice for what they were trying to achieve on the album, being that sort of sonic mix of their influences.
Yeah, I think my response to this question is a combination of the three that we've heard here. I think My Baby's Gone Away like opens the album really well. It sets the stage. It's got the 50s pop rock sensibilities. It's got the group harmonies. Doghouse is a banger. I'm gonna be listening to that one for a long time, even if the rest of this album I'm not. Original Doo-Wop Spaceman I thought was another really fun one. It actually reminded me of Hippocampus quite a bit.
Yes, man, Hippocampus are fucking class. They're so good. Like, I love. They've just released like a EP of just their second demos, and like, check it out. It is so good.
Yeah, we're Hippocampus fans here. Yeah, Original Doo-Wop Spaceman I thought was a bit of a black sheep in that you could actually kind of tell what he was saying in this song, and I enjoyed it. Also, just the sort of conceptual level of Spaceman was giving me some Ziggy Stardust vibes, even if the sound itself wasn't.
I knew you were gonna say Bowie because I was like, is it just the Spaceman thing that's giving me Bowie vibes here?
If I can compare something to Bowie, I'll find a way.
I was gonna say, if Brady can bring Bowie up, he will. Yeah.
I think my favorite songs were kind of what was already said here. Doo-Wop Spaceman, I like the album, like I said, wasn't really up my alley, but I loved that track. It had one of my favorite lyrics. And I don't know why it just like got me, but just when you're not running, you try your best to hold tears that aren't coming, or take me to the pictures of my head lost in the sea. I really liked those. And then second favorite song, I'd probably have to say, you know, the title track Sandman. I love the surf rock that it came into with. You don't get to hear that done so well very often anymore. I really liked that.
Yeah, my favorite track of the album is Sandman, because I just didn't expect like this surf rock sound in the start of the second track. It just blew me away. And like, I loved how the bass was just grooving, just keeping the groove in the background and all, like keeping all instruments together, all glued together. And I love like the instruments in the background and all, because I listened to like Cold War times, and each time I was listening to it, I heard like a new instrument and all, like this little kind of synthesizer or organ holding and like sustaining a note in the background and all. And I just thought that was cool. I just love how much like so much instruments are being played in this one song and all. And each time you listen to something new. It's just I think that's what makes a great song. So yeah.
Yeah, the way that they're able to weave so many different things together, and initially you wouldn't think that it would work. Like, they have jazz and garage rock and all these different, like, very almost opposite influences, but the way that they put them together works somehow in this really weird way.
I definitely think that the sound works, but I definitely think there's times in the album where I feel like they're kind of pushing the borders with it a little bit, where it feels like it's either one really simple idea or just an idea that hasn't really taken off as much as other ideas on the album, and it just kind of leaves for from I'm guessing also what everyone else is saying here, a couple of really rememberable tracks in the album, and then again a lot of tracks that you're just kind of like, okay, that I kind of remember that one. Oh, that one, okay, you know.
Like, it could be a bit too much sometimes. Like I don't know, just you can put so many instruments into one song like before it gets too
Yeah, it's a real fine line,
bundled up.
isn't it?
Yeah, just you listen to it
Real
and be like,
fine line.
so much happening here, and you can barely hear the drums or the bass sometimes. There's 3 guitars and acoustic just there.
And I think too, if the instrumentals are doing so many little things, that just comes back to my point of like, why not lift that up and highlight that more in the music? It'll just diversify the sound even more.
Absolutely, yeah.
Has everybody had a chance to go?
Just quickly throw out a fave. Sand Orchestra, which was one of the shorties in the middle of the record. Definitely one of those cases where you wish a song was like a lot longer than it was, so you could just like hang out on the vibe for a while. But I did kind of like the 2 shorter songs serving as kind of a interlude of sorts, splitting up the record. I kind of liked the pacing switch up. But someone earlier, I think maybe Brady, said the second half of the record was less strong, and I would agree with that. That's the tipping point.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because Lullaby was my favorite, and it's like the shortest song on the album. But I thought it was just really beautiful, and yeah, just manages to like capture my attention every time I would listen to the album through. Some of the songs just like stick out more than others, and that was one that I always knew, oh, that's that one. All right, so next, I think lines or lyrics that stuck out to you. Did anybody have anything that they really liked? I think Nicci mentioned one, but is there any more?
It was literally just the same one that Liam said about the doghouse. It's just, I don't know why. I listened to the album earlier again today, and it's just been like stuck in my head the whole day. Like I just really like this. It just plays up a really comfortable vibe when you're listening to it. It's like you could just sit down and chill, and you don't really need to worry. Do you know what I mean? It's just a really comfortable like vibe to sit through.
I think there's a lot of power in the simplicity of Doghouse. Out of all of the explorations of this aesthetic that they did on the album, I think Doghouse was the one where they really hit the nail on the head. It knows what it's about. It's simple, and it's really confident in that. Like that chorus, you hear it once and it sticks in your head. Like, it's not poetic. It just is what it is. Put me in the doghouse, baby. I want to be with you. And like, you just want to move. You want to shout it with them.
From what we had a really quick chat about it before, and from what me and Liam were talking about, like it does have punchy moments, like a doghouse being the obvious one, and it does kind of have these like little niche moments where it has these little memorable like faux pas or whatever you want to kind of say. But I think overall, like it just kind of like it leaves me not really paying full attention to it. You know, it's kind of looking at a big group of people, and there's a million things going on, and the lead singer's somewhere back in the middle of it, and you're like, I don't really get the message here, you know. I kind of feel like there could have been more of like an overarching like continued story to kind of link up the album, and maybe that could have saved it from falling flat in the second half, you know. Maybe it's just a case of the songwriting, but I'm not entirely sure. I just know for me that like there are a couple of really, really strong moments, but there was also a lot of moments that I'm going to forget in the next week from that album lyrically. So
I definitely looked up the lyrics to get more in depth of like what they were trying to say. And I agree with Jordy. I feel like I was expecting, after reading the influences and stuff, like more of a story, more of like a cohesive picture. And it kind of it like the songwriting, when you are reading the actual lyrics and you can tell what they're saying, it doesn't always make a ton of sense.
I think you get snippets, like it gives you some little like metaphor, and then it backs off. Like it's just a little snippet of what they're trying to say in each line.
Yeah, but like I think like that would be really clever if there was like some like a major underlying context, and then they could fill it up with like some cool aesthetic stuff. But like what they're filling it up with just kind of sounds like really sort of generic songwriting stuff, and it doesn't sound like they should have pushed it to be as aesthetically as much of like a film concept story driven album as it was, because it just didn't come across like that to me.
Yeah, it was more loose. Like it was sort of there,
yeah,
but it was more loose, like the whole concept of the first half of the album and then the second half after Sand Orchestra and Lullaby being like a different mood, slightly slower songs, more somber, and like it felt like it was trying to be like two halves of a play or two halves of a movie, but they didn't really connect.
From the lyrics, like there was a continuous story, like like I didn't realize it was a concept album until I looked it up. It just sounded like a bunch of different songs put on an album, and even though I enjoyed all those songs individually, which I really, really did, I really, really liked them. But like I was because I liked them individually, not together as an album. Even though they do all sound sort of similar.
To add, it just sounds like we're all kind of saying we like some of the ideas that were there, but they just weren't implemented well enough. Like the through line just kind of wasn't there. I also agree with all you guys on the lyrics stuff, but one thing that did stand out to me in The Crying Girl was this gang vocal part where he's saying like, and I know my jokes are getting old, and the gang vocals are like, no, you don't.
Yeah. I love
and I like that kind of interplay, that kind of like omniscient narrator kind of weighing in almost like from the audience perspective. Makes me think of like the figures on the pots in the Hercules cartoon that like sing the story of Hercules and like contribute to the narrative in that way. That also feels very show tuney. But literally those are the only lyrics that stood out to me. Like if you asked me to like recall anything else, Doghouse. I mean, you know, the bangers, but
that's it. It's like hands up. There's not really much else you can say. It's got its great moments, but in between that,
like I do agree with Jody. Like it's kind of like those. This is kind of like a 1950s kind of like those popular songs from the 1950s, where they talk about like a girl and like how he loves her and all that. Yeah, I think I kind of agree with Jody in that part. Like, it's just kind of generic songwriting. We're just from point A to point B. That's just my opinion on it. Like,
I think there were some great Henry was talking about like the conversation between the lead singer and the backup singers. I loved that. I thought that was so cool. Felt very 1940s, 1950s, and they cited Louis Prima as an influence. I think that's saying, I'm probably not saying that right, but he was a jazz blues musician, singer, and like big band leader from New Orleans. And that's sort of thing that they'll do like with jazz musicians. Like they'll have a conversation, like the lead singer will like ask the band a question and they'll answer with their instruments type thing. And I felt like they were trying to recreate that a little bit in some of their songs, like The Crying Girl and stuff. And I really liked that aspect of it. And Sandman, I thought was, it made me think of that 50s song, Mr. Sandman, you know, the famous one, Mr. Sandman. But that one's sort of like, the character in that one is more of like a positive thing where they're asking like Mr. Sandman, I wrote it down, bring me a dream, make him the cutest that I've ever seen. So basically like bring me a man to dream about. And it's sort of like literal, metaphorical, whatever, but it's like a positive influence, the Sandman. And then in this one, it's like flipped on its head because he's making him dream about the girl that he lost. So it's a really like a more painful experience. And he's like, please let me not keep dreaming about this girl. So that's what I got.
I'm gonna just say quick, Hank, I love that you compared it to the girls from Hercules, the backup singers. I was getting like West Side Story vibes from it. I don't know, like I could just picture them like following behind Johnny, like, you know.
Yeah, I think the harmonies really, really, really worked really well with the whole album. Like I think all the actual, like even though like the lyrics may not sound out, I think all the vocals actually, like I really, really enjoyed them. I know maybe like you couldn't like hear what he was saying, but I think after like a couple of playthroughs, like I could understand everything that I was saying. So like it didn't really bother me as much.
Yeah, even if you can't hear the words, I think it sounded nice regardless. Like his voice was really nice and the way the style he was singing in.
I get that. I think that if like they could if they kind of remastered it and redid it, they could make it better. Do you know what I mean? Like it feels that like it's good, but it's like not just quite 100% of the finished product. They could have just done a couple of wee bits differently and a wee bit more to make it just a wee bit more stand out and more memorable. Do you know, more memorable, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sounded like they recorded it in a 50 studio in that time frame, and they just need to have the 2020 remaster. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, recorded in stereo next time.
Yo.
No, that's okay. I actually like that bit of their aesthetic, but
yeah,
it's one part of it that stands out.
for sure.
How would you describe the music to someone who'd never heard of it before?
I think it's just like all music that was popular in the 50s, like a bit of surf, blues, doo-wop, and like a bit of pop music into it, and they just put it together to make their own little thing and all. So I think that's how I would describe it to people.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna say that Imagine the Killers did a cover of the best of the 50s. You got it.
I think you could say, like, if you want to describe it, what it sounds like, it's just, if you go back to the 50s, you just finish your day of work, you've had your dinner, and you're just chilling, you get a drink, and then you just put the radio on, and this is just your chill music. You might spoon about the living room with your wife and have a dance and all that, but like, that's just what will be on the radio.
I've got 4 words. Dive Bar Beach Boys.
Yes.
Yeah, there was so much like Beach Boys influences, like, but I really feel like there was this sort of like weird 2000s vibe from the album. I think it was just like of how the
guitars
songs
maybe
were like laid out. They had like, as the songs like progressed, hence why like we reference the Killers, like in the Hot Fuzz album. I wish I could remember the song, but like when as the song progressed, like I was listening to it, I was just like, this is just literally what I've heard before with the Sandman. Like I think all the songs in the 2000 era will have these big massive bills with all the production that had gone well into them. This was kind of that, but just in the 1950 sort of style.
Yeah, definitely. Like, as in, even the production is definitely trying to show that 1950s thing. But there's kind of like a couple of like weird anomalies. The fact that they have such a heavy overdriven sound and they're recording it with like to sound like it's from the 50s, even though they never had that type of overdrive or distortion in the 50s, you know. Of course, I think ideas like that maybe come across as a bit sort of crossing paths, maybe. I think it's a catch-22, and it really is trying to combine the best of modern and the past, really, aren't they?
It was Believe Me, Natalie, on Hot Fuzz. That song.
There we go. I said all of that just so Liam could fact check.
Good teamwork. All right, do we have any?
I was gonna say the prompt is how we would describe it.
Yeah.
For anyone who knows, there's maybe a little backstory here for anyone who would ever listen, but And Justice for All, the 4th album by Metallica, terrible bass mix, completely scooped Jason Newsted's bass.
Absolutely.
Like,
it's the definition of drop the bass, like.
Yeah, it's so awful. And so anyways, if you take that concept of just scooping it out, I would say if you're into the idea of music where kind of all of it is scooped out somehow, but you're also really into like the 50s pop aesthetic, these are those two things. If you're like Jason Newsted bass sound on And Justice for All, plus I still use my 50s kitchen appliances for some reason. That's the vibe.
Perfect.
Yep. What other artists would you recommend based on this album, based on Trudy and the Romance as a band?
For some reason, I was thinking King Cruel.
Like,
easy.
The vocals, the vocals are literally just King Cruel's, like, aren't they?
Yeah. Like that. It's just that like whenever I was like getting those vibes from it, like it's just yeah.
Like, especially like it's like if you listen, I think the new albums they do more fact checking, but the new album and the Oz, like I feel like that's where like vocally they try to emulate, but it doesn't really come across the same way. And then when I think of band, or I really heard like I really heard like Rex Orange County was the happy Trudy and the Romance of the Sad. Like there's both artists who are on the same sort of pipeline, but I think Rex Orange County sort of is a little bit better because I feel like when his songwriting, when he does do the sad songs, he puts them in the right places on the album, and when he does do the happy songs, he puts them on the right places on the album.
Yeah,
like the song could have actually maybe been better placed in the album. I played it for my two mates because I was like, I wanted to see what they thought on it too, because I was like, I'm doing this, so do you want to hear the album? And then they're like, yeah, I liked it, but like it ended, and like whenever you said it ended, this kind of ended. Like my mate Jack was just like, yeah, was that it? Like he's just like, oh, Chase didn't realize that was it over. It kind of felt like there was, they didn't really finish it off big or anything.
Yeah, the way that they started it out so strong, ending was kind of a letdown for me.
With the information you found on their Bandcamp page, I'm equal parts validated and disappointed because I no longer have an original take. But the exact two things I said for artists I would recommend were Beach Boys and Jonathan Richman.
Really?
Like, yeah, if you channel this through like 80s Jonathan Richman, just like when he was writing those those playful like high school dance-ish songs, like Morning of Our Lives, that summer feeling, that's what this is. This is sad.
The album was Man Alive by King Kong.
I think I'd agree with everyone here about Beach Boys, Johnny Richmond, but I also want to throw out there Tom Waits, actually.
Whoa.
The vocals kind of give me that vibe, and I know I kind of criticized the vocals, but I don't know, they, in a positive way, they do feel a bit similar to me.
Yeah, it does remind me of like his first album and all. It was kind of bluesy, kind of rocky, like kind of bluesy rock kind of thing. And like some of these songs remind me of like, I feel like this could be John Waite's song a bit, but I don't know. That's what it did remind me of Tom Waits a bit as well, to be honest.
Similar thoughts to all y'all. But also in a weird way, Margot and the Nuclear So-and-Sos has a weird sort of, again, I can't almost put it to words, but they have some sort of Americana adjacent feel shtick. They've also, I think, got a big band and some busy mixes. Not that it's like the doo-wop thing at all, but that might just be another one I'd throw out.
Never heard of them. Look that up.
Also very sad. So
Also very sad. Love it.
expect that.
It also gave me a Hers vibe as well. Like if I was going to recommend, I'd recommend Hers, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago. They're a great band.
Really good. A couple that came up on Spotify that I think are sort of similar. Loving and The Red Pears. And then for more like not really sound, but Dead Rabbit, they just put out a couple new singles that had more of like a theatrical quality to the way that their new album's supposed to sound. So not really that similar, but I honestly couldn't find a whole lot of people that I thought, oh, they blend this many genres and elements and have also like a cinematic storyline, and it was just a very unique combination of things that was hard to replicate. So that's all I got.
Yeah, like that kind of made me of like, they don't sound, but both of these bands don't sound like anything together. But I was kind of thinking of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, because like the amount of times they like,
yeah, man, definitely
few genres together, and I was like, what's going on? What's happening here? Like,
yeah,
like not lyric wise, or like, and also music, but it's just the way they, how this band kind of fuses, like puts genres together, as the same as King Gizzard, who like one album to like jazz, next album to metal, next one to bluesy pop and all
yeah, and sort of that overwhelming like combination
that of different genres. Yeah,
totally.
We need a King Giz doo-wop album.
they probably will
Could
do
be
one.
next.
Yes,
They probably will do one.
Yes, we.
I can see it on the future.
All right, we got any more artist comparisons? Is that all we got?
I think we've talked about the Killers too much.
For some reason, his voice kind of made me of, what do you call it? like the Arctic Monkeys. I don't know why. It's just his
Mhm.
voice. Like,
It
I
was
got the
kind of
exact same
thinking.
feeling.
and the way he yells, like he yells and all. It's like it kind of sounds like a boy and all.
I think it's just the fact that it uses noisy guitars and shouty, unintelligible British accent vocals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good-
So
It's
good
just
recipe.
Liverpool, so this music that's just coming out of Liverpool, like
controversial opinion or what, but like, yeah, I don't know. I just think that there we are similar in that sort of sense for sure. I think you've hit the nail on the head in that one too.
I didn't want to say this in case it sounded too blasphemy and all that shit, and also
I totally agree with that. I'm really glad you said that, actually, especially thinking about how I think the first track is a really strong open. It carries a lot of that, like, first two albums, Arctic Monkeys energy with the gang vocals. Like, I have no idea what pretty much any of the words are in this entire album, much less the first track. But in the chorus on the first one, there's this gang vocal part where he's like wailing about something, yelling, it's gruff, it's raspy, I don't know. And then the gang vocals like, don't you know she's been can we say naughty words on this?
Yeah.
I've been
I
I've been
love that
saying
one
naughty-
too.
Don't you know she's been fucking around? Like, you hear them like, oh boy, we're in for it today, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's got that attitude.
Naughty words, and meanwhile, like the whole We Are the Trees band have just been sitting here swearing away.
I think it says shit like 5 times. Right now, like
You don't notice it when other people are doing it.
Yeah.
I had
we're
no
not helping.
idea.
We're
But
not
they're
helping the Irish stereotypes here, are we? By
No.
I know what the fuck you mean.
that's all I can fucking say.
It's an endurance term over here. It's like I promise it's normal over here.
It just
Yeah,
flows in with
absolutely.
the rest of the sentences,
I
You
wasn't
don't
even
know.
thinking about it, but like I was about to say, I was like, wait a minute, is that bad? Even though precedent of this entire half hour, however long we've been talking, definitely gives a resounding, yeah, just say it.
That's good.
Speaking of just say it, gang vocals are like the best thing in music. I don't care what kind of genre it is. I love gang vocals. Like 15% more gang vocals across the board. Like doo-wop, great. Jazz, salt peanuts, great. Doesn't matter. Just want to shout out to gang vocals. Or whatever they're called. I don't know if that's like a...
Yeah, you can just call
There's
them
some real... Okay, harmonies.
Yeah, the harmonies in this album were generally like really, really, really good. Something that like I really feel is missing from a lot of music. Like
I thought the harmonies was like the best thing
It's
about
like-
this album.
yeah, as like like in the podcast we done with you before, Karina, like I mentioned how like we took a lot of inspirations from the Eagles and like through their harmony style, and Only by the Night by the Eagles really like when I hear that song, I would also like that whole song is just basically like that whole album. Like you should really give it a listen to if you haven't heard it before. Like the harmonies in that song are like literally some of the best I think I've ever heard in my life. It's probably one of my favorite songs.
Do we have any final thoughts or comments on the album?
If it was half the length, it probably would have been good. Not in the main way, but like in the terms of like the first half was just like I really enjoyed it, but the second half was just
Like an EP.
didn't kick. Yeah, it would have been a really good EP if they would have
What
if they took the albums out of it. A couple of tunes out.
Yeah,
the right kick up the Irish.
I definitely am seconding that, right? What I have in my head, right? 2-part EP series where they had the first half of the album with a small instrumental track at the end. Then the second half starting off with a small instrumental track on a second EP. And then obviously he would have had way more time to just like do what they do best and like write a lot more bangers there. It would have been a way stronger effort, but it's not to talk down what they're going for here because like I'm excited to see what they do with it. I think they just need to refine that sound and really get it to be to the point and punchy and less kind of blurry and murky.
I think this album is a love letter to the 50s, and for what it is, I think that they captured the sound really well, but in so doing, I feel like they kind of forgot that there needs to be a Trudy and the Romance brand from this album. I don't feel like I got very much of a read of the people behind it.
Yeah.
to the point of bringing up King Gizzard earlier. When King Giz makes an album, you know it's them. You don't know what it's about. You don't know what you're getting into, but you always know who you're listening to. It sounds like them, no matter what decade it sounds like it came out of. And this, like, I don't know if this is a Trudy and the Romance album or someone else or a collection of covers. I mean, I know it's them, but I just don't feel like there's very unique take that feels like it came from them specifically.
I think that they get lost in the fictional narrative of like they're performing as the band, the original doo-wop Spacemen, and I feel like that's who made the album, not Trudy and the Romance. And it kind of gets like, because like I said, it's kind of funny. I couldn't find a whole lot about the band when I was doing my research, and I feel like that also speaks for like the album. You can't really hear them in it either.
I think that's a really common problem for concept albums too. Like they just get too lost in the story that they're trying to tell, and they forget that, you know, like part of this is like making a stamp for your sound. So I think if they kind of brought themselves out of the story a little bit and put Trudy and the Romance back into it, I totally agree with everything you said.
It's not just about having a good story and good visuals. It's about having like a personality or something that you can actually connect to and relate to in a sense there at the end of the day. And I think it's that human touch that this album's missing.
Yeah.
It's like if you listen to them on the radio, like a casual fan, you'd be like, do you think they'll be like, oh, that's Trudy and Romance? You'd be like, oh, I like that song, but I don't know who it's by or something.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is one of those bands that is like totally different live, and maybe they found their success and came together and like they play super tight together, and then they just have trouble translating those ideas to the record, because sonically what I'm hearing could be really dope live. I'm willing to believe like they would blow it out, but on the final mix, I'm not super pleased, like I think a lot of us are. So, but I also don't know, like, do they do the doo-wop stuff across all their albums? Is that what they'd be like live, or is this more contained because of the concept? I'm not sure, but yeah, I'd give them a chance live.
From what I was able to find, it seems like they do kind of make it a more theatrical experience. Like they'll all dress up in like the suits, and I think it is kind of what you're saying.
I think I gotta say the opposite. I actually really like. I don't think everyone does really enjoy the album. But I really like it. I think I will listen to it again. I think you gotta keep in mind this is the first album. This is their debut album, and I think it is a really good first album. They shouldn't have chose concept album first. I don't think, like the way that when the album goes, the songs don't blend into one another perfectly. And there's tons of concept albums that also don't have that. I'm not saying that's a problem, but I feel like at the bottom where everyone else I believe feels where it was a bit lacking. I don't agree. I actually really like those songs. I think I enjoyed every track, and listening to it more and more, I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it more. I really like this album. I think for a first album, it is a good start, and I think if they and I actually love the mix. I think the mix is exactly what they wanted, and I think with a bit more money and someone maybe reining them in a little, like a producer who could get a bit more hands-on with them, I really think that they would do. I think the next album. I think the next album should be great from this album, and I think it will be well more refined after from what we've seen. Because like you gotta remember, the first part of the album was really well put together. It was just the last bit that was a bit off. But I think it was only like 4 tracks, and it was because they were all sad instead of like maybe one of them being a bit happier.
I kind of wonder if, like, listening to what you're saying, if concept albums are, I guess for like lack of a better way to put it, kind of like a cop out for putting the person into it. Like they're creating a character to hide behind. And I feel like on the second album, I totally agree. Like since the first half of this was solid, if they can bring themselves back into it and not hide behind like the character that they created for this album, they're going to come out a lot stronger.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think with like when you're doing your first album, the character you want to show is the character that you are on stage. And I think later on doing a concept album about a character, it does work because you know the character telling the story is the band you're going to see.
Like
But
you need to build up a character and all. You need
yeah,
to build
but if you're creating a character that we might never see again, then it is hard to attach to it as an album, as a concept album. But I think individually all the tracks are really, really, really good. And I think I really can't wait to hear the next album.
I agree.
Just
I really like it. Sorry, go ahead, Lap.
no, I was just going to say, to talk about the Killers one more time, to bring home that point, Liam. Mr. Brightside and Miss Atomic Bomb are like the same parts of the same story, but those albums came out like, a decade apart. And the Killers nailed it. So I think there's a lot to be said for that kind of patience and that build. And I don't know, maybe it's unfair to say new bands can't do that, but I generally agree with what you're saying, that concept album is a bit much to bite off.
Probably it's all just about a learning curve, I suppose too. Like, I mean, it's just it starts off super strong, and I'll definitely like I enjoyed listening to it. Like, even like my mate was just like, "Oh yeah, Tristan, sure you listen to the game, won't you?" I'm like, "Yeah," because I enjoyed it, but like I could definitely feel that there's could be more good things coming with them.
I, for one, like if this sort of doo-wop aesthetic is something they stick with for the long haul, like if this is really what Trudy and the Romance is, I would love to see them take that sort of musical approach to ideas outside of romance and heartbreak. Because I mean, that's where that genre lived in the 50s. Where can they take it in 2020 and beyond? That's what I'd love to see.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I wonder, is their music videos very visual, or like, because you were saying, Kira, that they're like, have they released music videos for the song?
Yeah, they have a Doghouse one and original doo-wop Spaceman. I think those are the only two that are actual like videos, not just like lyric videos.
There's a band I don't listen to, but my mate Chris here, give him a shout out. Like he loves this band, Coheed and Cambria, and when they do a lot of their albums are concept albums, I believe. I don't know if none of them are.
I think they're all the same concept too.
Yeah, so
like it's all one gig.
Yeah, and even the side stuff.
That's it.
They're all the same concept. And what's class is they release comic books with the album of the story of what's going on in the album, but in comic book form. And like that, and like, so I think they have like 3 or maybe 4 now. I'm not too sure. That'll be another fact check. But like I think when you're doing a concept album, there has to be another concept on the side that people can read, visualize, or hear, or see. Like I think there's some really good concept albums as well that just have music. But I think it's also I think it's sometimes harder for a lot of people, especially with your first album, to fall into the concept when there isn't a concept you've already shown.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those things with the way like music and everything's constantly evolving. Like look at it, like older concept albums, even as compared to newer ones. Concept albums as a whole have become so much more like visual. It's all about creating like an immersive world and like really taking your listener into it, which is why you'll see the likes of like comic books or an extended universe being added to concept albums and things like that are coming out now. It's really just about giving as much content as you possibly can in that sort of cases, and I just feel like these guys haven't really delivered on that. But however, as everyone has been saying, have some really, really strong musical ideas, and I'm also really excited to see what they come out with next.
Me too. I think whatever it is, it's going to be great. Anybody else? Final thoughts?
Great album. Would listen again.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for being on the LUMR Roundtable for December. and discussing Sandman by Trudy and the Romance. It was really fun. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having us on. It's
Yeah,
been
thanks.
fun.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Nice
Cheers.
to
Yeah.
meet you
Well,
guys.
Yeah, this
Uh,
was fun. It's good
no,
having
th-
more company.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thanks for bringing us on, having a good chat. We love music, if you didn't know. So, and we love talking about music. So we're really, really happy to be brought on. And it was really lovely to meet you guys as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was great to chat to new people instead of just talking to the same four walls.
Tristan, don't call me Delaney and Liam walls. That's really mean.
I meant like just being in the house lab, but like, you know what I mean? Just spice up my day a bit.
Yeah, instead you get to come on here and hear Americans call fuck a naughty word.
Oh, naughty, naughty.
No,
Your accent's amazing, laugh.
No, no, no.
Naughty, naughty word.
Hey,